Welcome to Parenting GPS, navigating your parenting journey. I'm Kari Kling, the host of your show. If this is the first episode that you are seeing in our series, here's a little bit of background. This is the fourth episode in my very first series, Divorce and Children. The first episode deals with things to think about if you're thinking about divorce, to try to provide support to your children, with Dr. Margaret Rutherford. Our second episode in this series is with Jessica Apgar, looking at mediation, divorce mediation, and what can you do to resolve your differences. Our third episode in this series is with Dr. Jenna Flowers, a psychologist who wrote a book on conscious co-parenting, and how do you do that so the kids don't feel like they've lost their parents. And then finally, our fourth episode in this series is what happens when the parents decide to move on and get remarried and create a blended family. And that is what our show is today. And I would like to take a moment to introduce my guests, Lori and David Sims, in what we're calling Blended Families, Nacho Parenting. And here is their introduction. Lori and David Sims, renowned blended family experts, developed the Nacho Kids method. Known as Nacho Parenting, this unique approach helps step families reduce stress and foster strong relationships. Through their Nacho Kids Academy, they equip step parents with essential tools, enabling them to navigate the complexities of blended family life and reduce the risk of failure. They've been featured globally on platforms like Headline News, The Atlantic, and the Transformative Nacho Kids method has positively impacted countless step families worldwide, offering hope and guidance in their blended journey. Lori and David, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
It's my pleasure. And so I'd like to ask you to begin today by sharing a little bit about your story and how Nacho parenting came to be, because I know enough about you to know that you didn't just fall in love, get married, and live happily ever after. Tell us a little bit about how did this come to be?
Well, we met, we fell in love. He has 4 kids, 3 of which are triplets. And I have 1 son, so all boys.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided to get married, but we knew that it wouldn't be easy. We had heard some of the blended family horror stories. So I read books, told him what they said. He talked to other people. We talked to preachers, pastors, counselors, anybody we could talk to prepare for this. We thought we were pretty good. No, year 2, it went to crap, major crap. It was so bad. His kids would call and say, "Is she gone yet?" I was sick from the stress. They thought I had pancreatic cancer. I lost a tremendous amount of weight. Don't worry, I got it back. And we had went to a counselor that we had met with prior to blending. And during the session, all he kept telling me was, "Lori, they are not your kids." And my first response was, duh, I know that. I know how many kids I have, but it kind of hurt my feelings because I cared about these kids. But that's all he said to me the whole time. We left in the parking lot. I told David, I said, all he said to me was, "Lori, they're not your kids." And we started laughing. And that was the first time we had laughed in a very long time. And I like to say the clouds parted, the rays came down from heaven. And I'm like, wait a minute, they're not my kids. And I realized in that moment, I was creating my own misery. These kids had 2 parents and did not want nor need a third.
Exactly. And David, was it the same for you in terms of how you felt or the dynamics between the children with you as a step parent?
Of course not. My baby's perfect.
So the dynamics with me and her kid was very different. Now, I did feel all the same pain that she felt. Like, we were drowning in despair. We didn't know what to do. We had tried a bunch of stuff and nothing seemed to work. It's like everything that we gravitated toward, we would do do this and it'll work. And it just wouldn't work for us. And so we were just at a point where we didn't know what to do. But my relationship with her son, though, was very different. He was young. He was 3 when we met. I think he was 4 when we got married. And so because he was so young, it was a very different type of relationship.
Yeah. And, I think that's the key point for our viewers, is that every family is different, and every relationship within the family, every dynamic is different. And so, what you're saying is not, okay, do this for any blended family, no matter what. You have to look at the circumstances. And, as a kid, who grew up, and I've said this, in some of the other shows, my parents had 4 marriages between them, and I was a part of 3 blended families. And so that's part of why I wanted to do this show, is because I understand what it's like for the kids. And it's not like they were all good or all bad. They all had different dynamics, and it's not something that you can just assume how to do. So what would you say to parents out there watching who are either thinking about creating a blended family or in a blended family? Maybe it's going well, maybe they want it to go better, maybe it's not going well. What do you see as the biggest hurdles for people who are trying to create a blended family to begin?
Wow.
I'll go first.
All right, you go ahead. What do you think is the biggest thing?
They are trying to force the nuclear family dynamic onto the blend. And they are not a blend, and they never will be. And the sooner they accept that, the smoother their life will be. It's okay to not be a nuclear family. You can create a wonderful blended family, but let go of those nuclear family expectations.
It's really good advice. David, what would you like to add to that?
Actually, expectations was top of my list. I would say to add to that some is also the roles. So the expectation and the roles, that's typically the top 2 things, and they go hand in hand. Part of the reason why we had so many problems in the beginning really was because how we define the roles. Yeah. Because I came in and I said, mentally I was really thinking I'm gonna pluck out, my ex-wife, and I'm gonna put Lori in there, and she's just gonna be the mom, and she's gonna be the wife and all this. Well, that role of mom wasn't available. And I expected her to kind of fill that role. And she tried. She came in like a lot of stepmoms, and she's like, I'm going to be super stepmom, and I'm going to do all these things for these kids, and they're going to love and appreciate me. And it just backfired like crazy. Yeah. So us coming in with those incorrect expectations and roles really started the process going downhill for us.
I couldn't agree with you more. And so many of the parents that I work with in my parent coaching are going through this, somewhere along the divorce journey. Maybe they're at the blended family stage, and expectation is really, and a definition of roles, I think, is really key, because like you just said, nobody's done this before. Even if they did it in another family, nobody's done it in this family. And I think it's important to say, okay, here are our expectations, but what are the expectations of the children? How are they feeling about, this new person coming in and living with my mom, my dad, whomever. And what does that look like? So talking to the kids about it is, I think, really critical as well.
And too, Kari, when we were getting married, his kids were happy. Everybody was happy. It was good.
Yeah.
Until it wasn't. And when it wasn't, it was bad. It was horrible.
Yeah. Well, the thing that happened, I believe, looking back, is the kids were all excited about us getting married. What they didn't know was going to happen was all the changes that were going to be involved in that. In other words, Lori was, as we were dating, Lori was simply coming in and spending time with me and
having fun with the
kids and all this. And then when she's stepmom, it's like, now you're going to brush your teeth, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do that, and you're going to clean up, and it's like, wait a minute, whoa. This is not what we signed up for.
Yeah.
And so the dynamic changed nearly immediately. And that's what we see in a lot of other blended families as well, is that dynamic, when it shifts.
Yeah.
Not everybody's on board with that. They're not expecting that.
That's a great place to end this segment. And when we come back from our break, let's dive into, so what do parents do, and how can they create that blended family so that it doesn't shift, at least it might still shift a little bit, but hopefully it won't shift so much that it can go right back, because there's always going to be a transition. And so when we come back, we're going to continue with Nacho Kids, looking at our blended families. We'll be right back. So in the first segment, we just started to talk about what can parents do? And we talked a little bit about the hurdles. Where do you encourage parents to begin this process of nachoing and creating those boundaries and to know where to begin?
Well, I was waiting to see if you wanted to respond first. Well, of course, we suggest getting into learning about the method and getting help prior to blending. Because one of the things that happens is once you blend, all these rules change and the kids look at it as the step parent being the problem. We didn't have to go to bed at 9 until stepmom Lori came in. We didn't have to eat vegetables till stepmom whatever came in. So if you implement a lot of those things prior to blending, they don't blame it on you. And the goal of nachoing in general is to reduce the stress and to better the relationships with the kids.
Yeah. I mean, our website has a lot of great information on there. So nachokids.com would be a great place to start. We have a podcast as well. So any of those resources would be great. And as you mentioned in the last segment, not all step families are the same, and there's different dynamics going on inside the step families. And so you really have to figure out what works for you. Where are you in your journey? And then start trying things and figuring out what works for you.
And I will add that even if a bio parent is deceased, that does not make the step parent automatically their parent.
Yep.
Exactly. Because so many blended families have the idea, you talked about it earlier, oh, we're just, everybody's happy, we're going to, get married and live happily ever after. And then you have the emotional implosion, at some point down the line, because it's not how, a lot of the kids feel, even if they really like the person. It's, what about my mom? What about my dad? What about this, what I used to do? And so do you recommend that people, and I think you just really answered my question, do the research and figure out nachoing, and this is one of the strategies. Obviously there are more ways that you can do it. I've looked at your website, I've listened to your podcast, which is why I wanted to invite you on this show. I think it's so very valuable, and you're on point with how you try to help parents and help them with their children. Do you recommend that this is something that is decided upon beforehand, if possible, not just, oh, things aren't going well, let's try to start nachoing, or even if things are going well to begin with that? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the more information you have, the better off you are, because you can go in and you can figure things out. The warning signs before things happen, and then you can start making those decisions. If not beforehand, at least you were able to recognize it sooner, and you're like, oh, I read about that. And then you can start having conversations about how to address it within your family. So the more information and knowledge you have, the better off you are.
And the tools that we teach don't only apply to blended family issues.
Yeah.
It's life issues. A lot of it is changing your thinking, changing your perspective. One of the issues I had, I was so wrapped up in my own hurt, I didn't think about what the kids were going through. They're going back and forth like a little bouncy ball, and they had no security really. And we forget that because we get into our own feelings.
So important. It's so important. And that's something that we've talked about in some of the other episodes in this series as well. Excuse me. And I like what you said about it's not just blended families, because nuclear families go through changes, when the kids become teenagers, when any kind of dynamic. And so it's just life, and it's another path. And how do you equip yourselves? So one of the things that I know from my teaching career and working with so many families, my counseling career, is that so many step parents not complain, but they feel stress about the fact that they don't think that their stepchild treats them with respect and doesn't listen to them like they would like that to be. And I have some thoughts about that, but I'd like to know, what are your thoughts about that, and how can that be turned around?
I think part of the problem is the step parents come in and feel like, I'm an adult, I married their bio parent, they should automatically give me respect. And I'm not saying you should ever allow a kid to cuss at you or throw things at you or safety issues or things like that. but you have to build that relationship with these kids. They have to learn to trust you.
Mhm.
And for instance, telling them to go brush their teeth, you would think that's no big deal. It is a big deal because they're thinking, who are you, lady? You're
Yeah.
coming in here telling me to brush my teeth. My dad's in there. He didn't tell me. So why do you care? And a lot of that is stuff that you really wouldn't think would be an issue, but it is. But once you build that trust with them and they know that you telling them, we don't think you should be driving at 90 miles an hour, is because you love them. It's not out of judgment or criticism.
Mhm.
Right. David, did you want to add to that?
Well, I mean, that term is so subjective. It's very hard, to really understand what somebody's saying until you dig down into it. When they say
Right.
the kids being, XYZ toward me, okay, I might look at that and go, I don't really think so.
Mhm.
The way I see it, it doesn't seem to be that way, but they see it that way. So it's a very subjective type thing. And oftentimes you just have to try to figure out what's really going on. And it may be the fact that the step parent is doing all types of wonderful things for the kid, and the kid's not really mad at the step parent. The kid's mad because their own bio parent's not doing those things for them. And so
Exactly.
it could remind them of what they're not getting from the person they really truly love and want to get that from. And so they lash out toward the bio or the step parent because of that.
Step
Right.
parents are easy targets.
Yeah.
Right. And so many families, and I don't know if it's as much as it used to be when I was a little girl, but so many children still have that fantasy. Maybe it's not a fantasy, maybe that's not the right word, but that idyllic image of, well, maybe my parents will get back together.
Right.
And when the step parent comes in, it kind of, says, no, that's not going to happen. And so there may be some resentment there. And it's not the step parent personally, it's the idea
Mhm.
of this step parent. Would you agree with that?
Yes. And it's very interesting. A lot of times when the bio dad, repartners, that's when you see these kids start acting up. It's okay that mom can have 35 boyfriends, but once the dad does, it kind of solidifies, wait, my parents will never get back together.
Mhm.
And it's easy to blame the person that they're with. You're the
Right.
reason my mom and dad won't get back together, especially if you have the other bio parent criticizing the step parent or the other bio parent, which is a no-no.
Exactly. And again, we've talked about that in some of the other shows. And anybody watching this, if you are dealing with this, I highly encourage you to watch the entire series. You can listen to it while you're out walking, listen to it as a podcast if you don't have time to sit down and watch it. It's so valuable in terms of the rest of your life and the rest of your relationship. And, Lori, you said something about trust, and that is so huge. And, in all the parents that I work with, I used to do teacher trainings. Um, with my own children, I always say, you know what, great relationships and great behavior and conversation and all these things with the kids, it's about three things: relationship, relationship, relationship. You want to make those emotional investments, talking to the children respectfully. So many parents I know, step parents and parents, say, well, my child is rude to me, my child is disrespectful. And as you just said, Laura, you don't ever condone a child, cussing at you or doing things that are inappropriate. But my first question is, can you share with me how you speak to them? It doesn't make it
Right.
right. It doesn't make it right. But if that's what's modeled, that is what is sometimes looked at from the child's perspective of, that's how you get a point across. And again, it's age dependent
Right.
and so many things, but it really, really is about the relationship and working on the relationship.
And
And
how do
so,
you respond to that child if they are, quote, quote, disrespectful to you? For instance, if they say, I don't like you, you can say, I'm sorry you feel that way, and walk away. You don't need to argue with these kids.
right,
And you also want to be kind with your responses to them, but
right.
you never engage in interaction that can be negative, because that's not going to help anybody.
Exactly. Exactly. And, you could also say something to add to what you just said about, I don't feel that way about you, but you're entitled to your feelings. And I think respecting the child's feelings, even if you don't agree with them, is so important, because it doesn't mean they're right and you're wrong or vice versa, but it's about acknowledging, it's about validating, and then being able to move forward in those relationships.
Yeah.
Right.
Oftentimes it's the only verbiage the kid knows how to use. In other words,
Right.
they don't necessarily not like you, even though they said, I don't like you. They just don't know how to tell you how they're really feeling. And that's the only verbiage that can come out. It could be that I feel a different way about you. I don't know how to say that at my age. And so I just say, I don't like you.
Exactly. And there might be something specific that's bothering them. And they, like you said, they may not have the vocabulary. And so it comes out in one big, I don't like you. And and then the parents or the step parents react, and then it gets even more convoluted sometimes.
Yes.
I don't like you either.
Exactly. And
Well,
so we're going
wait.
to take another break. And when we come back, we're going to really dive in again to, so what can parents do? Where do they begin? And then in our fourth segment, we'll take some questions from our viewers. Thank you so much. We'll be right back. Lori and David, if you were talking with an audience of people that were getting ready to begin a blended family, in terms of the role, the name, stepmother, stepfather, what advice would you have for people entering this kind of a situation?
I'd say don't do it.
I-
Don't do the name convention thing. The reason I say that is because what we usually see is when people get in trouble in their blended families is usually when, for example, the stepmom is trying to take over some of the roles and responsibilities of that mom. And so when you use a term like stepmom, it gives the connotation that that's what they're supposed to be doing. And so if I could, flip a switch and make a change, I would say take the whole mom part out of it, because that's what we see that gets people in the most trouble.
My one of my stepkids, I asked him one day, I said, why didn't you tell me that? He said, well, I thought dad would tell you. I look at you as an extension of my dad. And I was like, oh, okay, that works. But the whole stepmom thing, it puts that societal expectation of you're supposed to be the mother and you're supposed to love them like your own. And God forbid, if you don't, you are going to the bad place.
You're supposed to be equal. Disney
Yes.
said so.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, just to clarify for our viewers, is get rid of the stepmom or stepdad.
Mhm.
Just the label, because that has so many connotations in society of what that's supposed to mean. And it, like you said, it's stepmom, like, no, I already have a mom. And so I know some families, that they refer to their step parent as their their bonus mom, their bonus dad, or just their first name, or my dad's wife, or my my wife's husband, whatever the situation is. So that's what you're encouraging.
Yeah. When Ashton Kutcher was married to Demi Moore, her kids called him Maud, my other dad. And I thought that was cute. Of course, you can't do my other mom because that's mom, but something like that. My stepkids have a nickname for me that we will not share. It's not bad, but it's just, we just won't share it. But that's what they call me. And when they refer to me, it's usually, this is my dad's wife, not my stepmom. And it's not that they think stepmom's bad. It's just, I guess they don't want to put the mom with it because we don't put the mom with it.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you have to do what works in your own blend. And some people are going to listen to that recommendation and like, oh my gosh, how dare you not call me stepmom or bonus mom or whatever. But it can come with some baggage. And so you just have to gauge that for yourself. Is it causing problems with how you view your blend and the roles there? And if it does, then find an alternative.
Right.
Yeah,
And
and I
don't
think
get so much, I'm sorry, don't get so
no, go
wrapped
ahead.
up in the labels, because the whole titles and labels you give people, they're irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think it's really important what you mentioned about Ashton Cooper or I'm not saying that right.
Kucher.
Kutcher, thank you. And Demi Moore is, ask the kids, what do you want to call my new partner? What works for you, and let them think about it, giving kids the input, and going back to what you said earlier about the bio parent, they still have a mom, they still have a dad, even if that person is deceased, they don't disappear from their memory.
Right.
And so let's focus on the bio parent. How does Nacho Kids, how do you encourage people to show value, to show respect to the bio mom, to the bio dad, so the child doesn't feel like the person they love is being pushed out of the picture. How do you encourage parents to look at that?
Well, one thing is, like, David tried to help with my relationship with his kids, because remember, we were in a bad place and we were trying to rebuild that relationship. So one thing he would do is go to the store, get their favorite candy bar, come home, tell me to give it to them. And I said, well, I'm not lying because I didn't buy it for him. He said, just give it to him. And so I would say, here, I got you this, whatever. And they love that.
Mhm.
But also, the happier David and I were, the better the kids were. Because if David was complaining about me, of course his kids aren't going to like me. Or if they see me making their dad unhappy, they're not going to want me around.
Mhm.
They want someone that's going to make their dad happy. Sorry, their dad happy, because that makes their life happy.
Exactly. And one of the things that I would like to encourage parents to do right now, and I can't remember, I think it was episode 5, something like that, one of the earlier ones. I did an episode on family meetings and how to conduct family meetings, just a little bit of the structure. It doesn't even have to have structure, but I want to encourage anybody dealing with this to go back and look at that episode, because family meetings, even at the beginning, if the kids are like, really, I have to do this, they're really a solid way to have a place to communicate. You're setting that time aside to say to the children, what do you think about this? Again, it's not like you're saying, you're the adult and we're going to do whatever you say, but it's important to get the child's input and again, acknowledge and validate what they're feeling, because they may be feeling guilty about, well, I'm here with my dad and my stepmom or whomever, and my mom's home alone.
Oh,
And
yeah. Loyalty binds are crazy. And
yeah,
I'd like to say, when you do family meetings, make sure you talk about positive things. Ask the
absolutely.
kids what things they like about the blend or their step parent or whatever, because our family meetings in the beginning turned into Les Bachelor and her kid. And I wasn't sitting there listening to that. And I wasn't going to let my kids sit there and listen to that, because that's all it turned into.
Right. Right. And we talk about that in that episode, and it's about constructive feedback. And so how can we make whatever the situation is better?
Mhm.
But I always say, don't always assume that your kids are going to just come up and tell you what they're thinking if they don't have a comfortable platform, to do that. And so
Right.
we've spent the majority of our time so far on some of the problems with blended families, on some of the hurdles that people feel that they go through. But I want to take some time and talk about some of the amazing transformations that Nacho Kids has helped families, blended families with, just like you said at the beginning, yours was after a year 2, it was bad. And now it's good again. And so could you share with us just, how some positives about going through this process?
Um, when you ask that, I think of a lady that messaged us, and we did a Facebook Live impromptu, and I would get a message from her that said, I want you to know you stopped me from committing suicide. Yeah, I still get goosebumps. And we had another lady message us the same thing. You don't understand the stress that this blended family stuff can put on a step parent. And of
Mhm,
course, stepmoms speak out more about it.
mhm.
And the number of step parents on antidepressants, anti-anxiety, suicidal thoughts, all this stuff, there needs to be more attention to it.
Mhm.
And as a bio parent, one thing you can do to help your partner is don't dump all your responsibilities of raising your kids on them. You still be the parent, let them support you, and let the step parent be kind of the fun parent, or the, not the right word, the fun aunt or the fun uncle. Just not be the parent, because
Mhm.
that's where the problems come in.
Right. Did you want to add to that, David, or
No, I mean,
have
I
to?
think, yeah, I think some of the major issues that we see coming in is just that it's the same thing that happened to us. I was expecting and allowing Lori to do the parenting role instead of me doing it, and I needed to step up and be more of a parent to my own kids. Instead, I was trying to abdicate that off on her, and so in turn, I caused part of the problem by expecting that. And we see that often in other relationships where the biological parent really needs to step up and be the parent so that the step parent can step back and not take on those responsibilities, therefore taking the target off their back.
And, you know, since our relationship or my relationship with his kids have changed, they will tell me things they don't tell him. It's either because I'm not the parent, so they don't feel that judgment or that criticism,
Wow.
or it's because they want me to tell him so they don't have to.
Yeah, she becomes the buffer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're living an amazing transformation of,
Yes.
you know, and what you said about some of the other people who and what they've been through. And speaking of other people, we have some questions from our viewers. And when we come back, we're going to, I'm going to read those questions to you and ask you to respond. We'll be right back. This is the part of the show that we take our concerns, our questions from our viewers, and I like to call it your parenting destination. And Lori and David, we have two questions today. The first is from Sandy from Colorado Springs. Sandy writes, my husband and I have a blended family. He has two children from his first marriage, ages 11 and 13, and we have a 3-year-old to get together. Whenever his older children are with us, I feel like he pays more attention to his older kids and tends to leave our 3-year-old out, and it really bothers me. Help.
We see that a lot. And the step parent, Sandy in this case, Sandy, your partner misses his kids when he doesn't have them. So he only has that time with them, whether it's 50%, 20%, whatever. And it's not that he's intentionally neglecting you or your ours child, but remember that this is the only time he gets with his kids. And also there's such a huge age gap between the ours kid and his kids. It's like if you took them to an amusement park, your kid can't ride the stuff his does.
Right.
So they're not at the age where you can say, okay, we're all going to go play basketball or we're all going to do those things, but you can find things that you can do as a family, maybe coloring, even though the older kids are going to be like, what? But it's just something to get everybody involved. And once the ours kid gets older, you can do like family game night and things like that. But it's not because he doesn't love your child. It's because he misses the time that he doesn't get with his other children.
That's really great advice, Lori. Thank you. And our second question is from Mac in Santa Barbara. And Mac writes, my wife and I have been married for 5 years and have a 4-year-old together. Her 12-year-old daughter is with us almost every weekend and for 6 weeks in the summer. My stepdaughter is rude and disrespectful to me, even though I try to be respectful and kind to her. I think her bio dad is trying to make me look badly in her eyes because he doesn't want me to have a good relationship with her. My wife doesn't say much because she doesn't want to cause conflict during the time that her daughter is with us. What can I do?
Hey, Mac. I would say that typically we see girls hitting that 12, 13-year-old age, and there's a lot of challenges with that. And so it could be related to that, may not be completely related to some sabotage, but let's assume that it is. There's nothing you can do to change how that other parent or that other household decides they want to treat you or to say things about you. There's not much you can do about that. So just be yourself, be nice to her as much as you can. Look for those ways to make a positive impact and positive conversations. Stay away from the negative as much as you can. And if she is being told that you're a bad guy, she'll eventually see that what she's being told and what she's experiencing don't match up, and you'll be fine.
Exactly. So don't engage. You know, just walk away. And again, it's not that you're encouraging a child to be disrespectful to you, but if it's a constant, no, I didn't, and all of that, where is that going to get you in the long run as well?
Well, and you have to wonder, is she being disrespectful when he tells her to empty the dishwasher? If that's the case, let mom tell her to empty the dishwasher.
Yeah,
exactly. And so just don't give up. Don't give up. And, you know, Lori and David, we could talk for another hour about this, but we are just about out of time. And I know our viewers are going to want to know, where can they find you? Where can they learn more about Nacho Kids? And I love the name, by the way. And so where can people find you? Please share that with us right now.
You can find us at nachokids.com is the website. And also we're on Instagram. It's nachokids_official. And we're on TikTok, which I don't do TikTok videos, but you can find us anywhere. Google it. And then there's the Nacho Kids Academy, and the link for Kari is going to be nachokidsacademy.com/GPS parenting.
Oh, amazing. Awesome. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you for taking the pain and what you went through after the first year of your blended family and using that to help others. Everybody could use a little extra boost in how to help with any point in the divorce journey, including the reparenting, the remarriage, and the blended family. And so first, I'd like to just say thank you to all of my guests who have been part of this very first series. I would love to hear from you to find out if you felt it was helpful to be able to go deeper into a topic, and if you'd like to see more series on different topics as opposed to individual shows. And Lori and David, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your story. And I'd like to close with a quote from both of you. And you said, "We consider it a blessing to spare others from experiencing the hurt and pain that we had to experience in our blend." Thank you so much for being here and for doing what you do.
Thank you.
Thanks.